This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest way to create a beautiful website, blog, or online store for you and all your ideas. They feature an elegant interface, beautiful templates, and an incredible 24/7 customer support team. Try Squarespace at squarespace.com. Enter the offer code VERBAL, that's VERBAL, at checkout and get 10% off. That's Squarespace. Build it beautiful.
Welcome to the Solid Verbal.
The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo-woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. Ty Hildenbrandt, back again with you. Dan Rubenstein, back again with us. Solid Verbal at gmail.com is still the email. Find us at solidverbal.com. Do head on over to itunes.com/solidverbal if you'd like to subscribe to the show or write us a fine review. Of course, we're on Facebook, on FanCred, and also on Twitter. Hello, Daniel. How are you?
If you'd like to see Daniel Rubenstein again, leave $38 in a paper bag at Yakko's.
What are you using to disguise your voice?
That's just good old-fashioned creative ingenuity. That was me the whole time, Ty. It was me the whole time.
It actually, I don't know if you saw, but it worked out well for the daughter in Taken. Who was taken. I saw that she's actually gotten engaged as of some point recently.
To one of the actors who played one of the kidnappers?
I would certainly hope not, but
I would, yeah. Well, what are you going to do?
Apparently there are photos out on the internet of the engagement.
That's good. I like that. She was also on Lost, right?
I have no idea.
Yeah, she was.
Didn't
on
watch Lost.
That's so weird. Even though I didn't care for the ending of the show, I feel like you should be on the pulse of the cultural zeitgeist, Ty.
I got 6 episodes in and I quit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was one of them.
I'm eternally confused by you.
How are you? What's going on?
I'm doing well. I didn't really do anything for All-Star Weekend for the NBA here in New York.
Yeah.
But had a good Valentine's Day.
Yeah. What'd you do for Valentine's Day?
I went to a showing. There's a theater in Brooklyn called Nighthawk Cinema. Big recommendation if you're visiting New York or you live in New York. Nighthawk Cinema in Williamsburg. They showed Pretty Woman, which I had never really seen all of. I'd always seen chunks of it on whatever channel, like TNT. And listen, I like Julia Roberts. I like Gear. I like Jason Alexander's in it. So it's also a cinema that I'm sort of singling out.
Yeah.
Because they serve food and booze. It was a brunch showing, opted not to get any booze, had a great breakfast sandwich, couple cups of coffee, a lot of leg room. Cool to see older movies on the big screen. Had a wonderful time. I went with my girlfriend too. I did not go to a solo Pretty Woman.
I was going to say, are you making the sad
Day.
face? Yeah, no. I did not do any of those because of some of the wedding activities and because fiance Kate.
Not enough time for romance?
Well, fiance Kate had a dress fitting.
Okay.
Earlier in the day.
Sure.
And given the weather, it snowed every weekend here.
It's been so assy in the Northeast.
On the assy? Okay.
Yeah.
It's been something here in the Northeast over the last couple weekends. We're in this weird pattern and we're getting all kinds of clippers and nor'easters and you name it every weekend. She wasn't sure if she was going to make it back up north from the fitting for us to engage in any kind of Valentine's Day activities. She decided last minute that she was going to do this. She was going to come back up. We were going to get our act together and plan something. Well, what we found ourselves doing was literally driving around eastern Pennsylvania, trying to find a place to eat because we didn't have any reservations. We didn't have the fondue pot ingredients at the ready. We didn't know what to do, Dan.
Ty, this is a big fatal mistake on your end.
It was a fatal mistake on my end. I figure we're getting married. She's stuck now. So even if the Valentine's Day thing doesn't work out, it's still going to be okay.
This is a bad omen. Bad omen.
Looked on Open Table, nothing.
Okay.
Drove to a couple places, nothing. The one place that had any openings, there were a bunch of weirdos looking at fiance Kate kind of funny. So we decided, no, we're not going to stay there. Finally, here's the story. It's a long-winded story. I apologize.
I should add, just to make you look even worse,
yeah.
I shopped for, prepared, and cooked dinner for my girlfriend that night.
Well, I mean, didn't you once get someone a map as a gift?
That was a long time ago.
All right, so I don't want to hear it.
Great gift.
I don't want to hear it.
I also thought ahead. I thought ahead.
That's a horrible gift.
Not a gift.
Anyway, let me talk about this. We decided we're finally going to go to this place. We make reservations on Open Table. We're on the way there. Blinding snowstorm.
Yeah.
blinding snow squall. I've never driven in snow that thick.
So you carried her, officer and a gentleman like.
We ended up ordering.
You were Louis Gossett Jr.
No. We ended up ordering takeout from an Italian restaurant. I almost crashed on the way there multiple times. They screwed up our order. We went back to her apartment and watched there.
Where the angels fly.
We did have champagne, though, so it was worth it.
All right. So you lose.
Yeah, I pretty much lost Valentine's Day.
So you lost Valentine's Day. You are. Yeah. Listen, I feel like you're going to make up for it with possibly the wedding on the Pennsylvania social calendar.
We'll be fighting to keep the paparazzi out.
Yeah, and you're gonna have a tough act to follow. I'll be at Ryan's, our friend Ryan Nanny. I'll be at his wedding a week before. So major college football media wedding month.
You're gonna be. By the way, you can play the role of like. Believe me, I've been watching a lot of like A&E or T, whatever channel has like all the bridal reality shows.
Right.
There's one where there's a bunch of brides that go to each other's weddings.
Right.
You can score these weddings and issue a full report.
I will.
If you so desire.
The show we do after your wedding, because what is your honeymoon status?
Honeymoon status is booked.
Oh, I'm shocked that you booked a honeymoon.
The honeymoon is
after your Valentine's Day debacle.
Yep, we're going to the local Italian restaurant. No, I booked it.
When is the honeymoon?
Immediately thereafter. A few days thereafter.
So your wedding is late April.
Yeah.
And it's on a Saturday.
That's right.
What day of the week do you leave for the honeymoon?
We're going Tuesday.
You're going Tuesday.
A few days in between there.
Will you be able to do a show on either Sunday or Monday?
Probably not Sunday.
Okay.
Probably
I
not
know what
Monday.
That means.
It would be right.
Ow!
It will be very difficult for me to somehow swing a show in between.
I'm proposing. You like that verb?
Yeah.
I'm proposing. You have one of two options. We can either try to squeeze in a show on Monday while you're packing for your honeymoon and have a million things going on.
Yeah.
Or I do a solo show with Ryan, whose wedding I have been to. And now at this point, I've also been to your wedding. And I talk about your wedding without you there to defend or react.
I have a feeling I know what Twitter's going to say. I have a feeling I know. We're going to have to leave this up to fiance Kate. I don't know how she's going to feel about this.
Or I guess I suppose I could wait. But people are going to be very eager to hear.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm looking forward to this show. Perhaps unlike any show we've ever recorded.
We're going to get 100,000 downloads on that show.
I'm very excited.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's fun to be with you again, Dan. It feels like forever.
Yeah.
We have a fantastic guest planned this evening, Travis Haney from ESPN.com. We will ask him about what he's done on Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. Just to compare things.
Strikes me as a romantic, Ty.
See if he did anything worse than I did.
He's anti. See that one?
Anti, yeah.
He's anti-Ty because he's romantic.
Is there any other news for us to discuss? Please, let's get away from talking about my Valentine's Day. It was, by the way, it was very fun. We enjoyed it. We made the best of it. We watched a movie. The food was good. We had champagne.
I'm only hearing one side of this.
It was just not the most well planned out endeavor.
Okay. The NFL Combine is happening, which is largely useless, other than the fact that all these players get to interview with their future NFL teams. It is nice to see these players. It's been 6-8 weeks since we last saw a lot of these guys, if not more. So nice to see familiar faces and names. And we hope that all sorts of people that we enjoyed watching play college football succeed wildly and don't get injured playing pro football. I don't think I have a stronger thought about the Combine than that. But I will say this as it relates sort of to that. Rivals.com.
Yeah.
A few days ago, it came out that they are listing at least a couple sixth graders, not seventh graders, not eighth graders, mind you.
Awesome.
They generally list high school students, high school players, as they gain notoriety, and they have them in their database so that people can reference said players when their teams begin to recruit them. I suppose there was a bit of a buzz around a couple of sixth graders, and because there's buzz, Rivals is going to cover said buzz, and there are a couple sixth graders listed on Rivals.com. In response, SB Nation, we started putting our own sixth grade recruiting profiles on there.
Yeah.
Pictures of us as sixth graders and strengths and weaknesses as it relates to our athletic careers and just general life habits. So with that, I ask you, what kind of sixth grader and sixth grade athlete were you?
I feel like I was a pretty good athlete in sixth grade, Dan.
That's what the word on the street is.
I know in 5th grade in particular at recess in tennis baseball, I was not only cool enough to hit 58 home runs in a full school year, I was also cool enough to keep track of everyone else's home runs. So I was one of those. I was always a stat head, but I was pretty good in tennis baseball, was a good all-time quarterback.
How were you as a kid?
As a kid, I wasn't much of a troublemaker.
Okay.
I wore some weird sweaters when I was growing up.
What were you into outside of sports?
Outside of sports?
Yeah.
Pretty much anything video game oriented.
What video game took up the most time?
6th grade was probably around the time of like Tecmo Super Bowl, Tecmo Bowl, games like that.
I loved Street Fighter 2.
Street Fighter 2 was always a favorite. Big fan of Kirby's Adventure, although I feel like that came later.
Right.
Anything Nintendo oriented was pretty much where I was at if it wasn't anything in the sports realm. But I was a pretty good athlete.
Weaknesses? Questionable sweater choices.
Yeah, the sweater choices were. And I can blame my mom for that. By the way, happy birthday, Mama H, today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Backbone of this show.
I could blame Mama H for that. They were goofy looking in hindsight, although they were probably very expensive in real life.
How were you with the ladies? Were you interested in the ladies back then?
I was interested in the ladies back then, but I was in 6th grade. I had no idea what I was doing.
Did you have a 6th grade or a middle school quote unquote girlfriend?
No. Oh God, no. No.
Were you nervous trying to talk to the ladies? Did you make an attempt to befriend any crushes?
I mean, I befriended everyone, Dan. I'm a friend of all people. That's what I do. But to say that I tried to make a kind of move in 5th or 6th, no.
There was no move attempted.
No, there was nothing. I had a talent. I was in a talent show. That was like my big thing. I played a ghost. The Ghost of Christmas Present, I believe.
Yeah.
That was like the big thing for me. I thought.
How were you at dances?
No. We didn't have dances.
Really? You didn't have middle school dances?
No, not really.
I got after it, Ty.
Yeah.
I got after it.
Are we still talking about football? Rivals in 6th grade.
Oh, yeah. Rivals in 6th graders. I'm just telling you, I got after it.
What happened? All right, so let me ask you a question. Not to change the subject and not to undermine what you're about to say. You got after it?
No, yeah, I got after it. But by that, I mean I got super nervous talking to girls and did not have a girlfriend in middle school.
If you are a 6th grader listed on Rivals, what does that do to your stock with the other 6th grade girls?
Don't think it changes it. You're probably already relatively popular if you're a really great athlete in 6th grade. I mean, that's assuming a lot.
Right.
But I think you're doing all right socially. The Rivals thing helps, and you can point to all the different sites you're now on, but that goes away. And especially I'm bringing this up right now. Let's see. Darren Bryden, pro style quarterback, which is insane. Enfield, Connecticut. So I'm already bored.
Do they even throw passes in games involving 6th graders? I was a 6th grade quarterback myself.
Tyson Thornton, running back, Springfield, Mass. 5'11", 170, 6th grader.
It's 6th grade?
All right, I get it.
I'm not even that now.
I get it. I know. Oh, that's true.
If you are the type of person who's going to seriously scout a 6th grader, you're like Buzz's dad in Little Giants.
Yeah, absolutely.
What kind of a person does that and takes it serious?
Rubbing his son's thighs down at night with buttermilk. I believe that's what the line was from Little Giants.
You're the coach from Mighty Ducks. Like, it takes a special breed of human to go there with this.
You're talking about the coach of the Hawks. You're not talking about Amelia.
No, I'm not talking about Gordon Bombay.
Right.
By the way, listen to our good friends over at the Last Row podcast for a full analysis on Gordon Bombay. But no, Coach Riley is,
okay.
He's the type of guy who scouts a 6th grader.
Right. Okay. Just making sure. You want to talk about the SEC?
Travis Haney?
Yeah, I think it's time to do that.
Before we get to our guest of honor this evening, a very quick message for all y'all. YOLO.
Y'all. Okay, continue.
You only live once. It is springtime. It's the best time to go and visit Vegas. You can get great deals on spring break, on March Madness, for all the NASCAR events. If you're into the clubs and EDM scene, I don't know. Whatever you're into, check out our good friends over at Vegas.com. They can help you save even more money. Some of our listeners have saved using this deal. $84 off at the Bellagio, $56 off at the Luxor, $90 off at Caesars, which is a great place to watch all of the tournament games. 10% off everything, excluding air hotel packages, is what the offer is. So you go to Vegas.com. You can cash in on all of these great deals. You can use their proprietary drop watch tool, which it promises you the lowest rates on hotels. It continues to monitor the price of your hotel even after you book. It'll notify you. Can you stop that? Because I'm dying here.
I'm giving the listeners texture.
It will monitor the price even after you book and notify you if the price changes to ensure that you get the best deal. You can cash in on this on all things found on Vegas.com with the exclusion of air and hotel packages. That includes headliner shows, tours, attractions, VIP bottle service at all the top clubs. Vegas.com, they've got all the insiders there to hook you up. Right now, all you need to do is go to Vegas.com, click on the microphone in the top right corner, enter our code, which is SOLID. You'll receive an extra 10% off everything, excluding the air and hotel packages. One more time, Vegas.com, Vegas.com. Click on the mic, get your bonus savings right now by using our secret code SOLID. All right, Daniel, joining us now, it's a first-time guest on the Solid Verbal. I read to you from the Twitter account of Trav Haney, ESPN. Quote, I follow college football for ESPN.com. I love my wife, brisket, and Whole Foods in some order, and I live that hashtag blessed life. Mr. Haney, welcome to the Solid Verbal. How are you, sir?
Thank you for having me. Long-time listener, first-time guest, so I appreciate the invitation.
So it's the offseason now, and we covered in alarming detail our Valentine's Day plans, or at least our Valentine's Day hot takes. Being so, it's the off season. You're on the road all the time during the season. What were your Valentine's Day plans with your lovely wife?
So I've been married now for a little more than a year. Dan's met my wife. Dan's brother went to the Rose Bowl, was my wife's Rose Bowl date. So
true.
This was our second Valentine's Day to be married. She's not big on it. So I got one of those that doesn't really put a high value on it. But I did find one thing, or she found one thing that we really gravitated toward that, you know, it kind of smacks of the theme of Valentine's Day. I mean, there's a reason why it was on. But she is a huge Audrey Hepburn fan.
Oh.
And at the drive-in theater here, which we hadn't been to before, they put on a double feature. And so we went to see Roman Holiday at the drive-in here in Austin. And, you know, otherwise, they could do that any day of the year, and we would have been totally game for it. Obviously, they were gearing toward Valentine's Day, but so we kind of got suckered into it because of the holiday, but we would have done that anytime. So that was what we did, and we had a really good time with it.
What were the snacks during the movie?
It came, guys, with a romance package. The normal tickets were sold out, so we were left with the romance package or not going. So we went with the package, and it came with its own parking spot, so you didn't have to fight for that.
Wow.
Which was helpful.
Are we talking about a paved surface, or are we going just old school on the grass?
It was just a parking lot that they threw a big screen up in, and now they're making hand over fist. You know? So good for them. Smart idea, enterprising people taking advantage of Austin, you know, social people who want to see a drive-in movie. But the romance package came with a rose for my wife. We each got our own individual bags of popcorn and a candy of our choice. She went with Gobstoppers. I went with Sour Skittles.
Okay.
And a beverage. So pretty good deal. I think it was, for the whole thing, it was like $50.
Ty, you know how I'm growing up? How you know I'm growing up? He said the words romance package over and over again. Yeah. And I didn't say one inappropriate thing or snicker.
This has really been a revelation for you, Daniel.
It's a new me.
Well, we found it ironic. I mean, we just leaned hard on it and laughed.
Good.
But like I said, I mean, it was either that or not go.
Oh, I think you made the right decision.
For the romance package.
I like that. I like that, Travis. It works for me. Final question, then I promise we'll talk college football. Fonduer or a fondonter? In which camp are you?
Well, when we lived in Charlotte, we met friends that worked at the Melting Pot. So we went down there. I'd never done it before. So I was a virgin fondeur.
Yeah.
And we went down there and kind of experienced every aspect of it, dipping all sorts of meats and cheeses and chocolates and all that. I wouldn't do it on my own. It was cool because we kind of had a tour guide. Without that, I would have felt completely lost and overwhelmed. So I think with that exception, it was really fun, but I don't know if it's something I would do regularly.
All right, Travis, we're post-signing day, which is always, I would say, a starry affair for SEC teams, certainly more so than teams from other conferences, generally speaking. And without getting too granular, because I don't want to hear about the 18th best player for whatever team, which coaches or programs stood out to you for, I guess, either positive or negative reasons?
Well, I'll put it out there first that I went to Tennessee, so I kind of I'm kind of watching them curiously, just because I have friends that work for the school and all my family's still in East Tennessee. So it's been kind of a weird decade or so for that school, and to see Butch Jones and the staff back up a consensus top 10 class. I think ESPN, we had them at number 5 for the second straight year. So to back up one class with another, I think that's just really significant about the strides that they're making to bounce back. I mean, you hate using that word, quote, back, because so many schools are trying to do it. Florida State being one that's broken through to be able to say that in the past few years. But I don't think Tennessee fans, or they shouldn't be if they are really hanging their hats on a tax slayer bowl win against Iowa. But I think seeing the players come in now 2 or 3 straight years and just see the talent pool and the depth increase, I thought that was a really big step for them. I spent the day, I drove over from Austin to College Station, spent the day with A&M's coaches. And I mean, you guys would have been really amused to see how Kevin Sumlin and his staff take signing day. Okay. I've never seen a more laid-back approach to really the entire day. I mean, he had there was an ESPN reporter there in addition to me, like a TV reporter, and he had his media obligations sort of throughout the day. But other than that, there was no real plan. There was no war room. In fact, they were sort of laughing at other coaches that would, like, literally one school, I don't know if you saw this, like they would ring a bell and cheer every time they got a fax in. And the coaches are sort of laughing at it going, gosh, come on. I mean, calm down. So, I thought that was kind of cool to see, behind the curtain that not everybody, they approached it basically how we are. I mean, they know it's important. They want to sign the best players, but they're not going to go overboard about it. And there was almost a sense of relief that it was over. And so I'm going, man, I'm in the right place. These guys get it. And that's not to say they don't care about it. I mean, they had a top 10, top 15 class, according to most people. They signed some good players that are going to help them, that they hope can help them anyway. But they didn't really get too wrapped up in the whole day. They know it's a part of the entire yearly puzzle, and they put in a lot of work to get to that day. But, I thought it was interesting to see the way that they handled it.
By contrast, where else have you gone where it's a 180 and they take it way over the top seriously?
I haven't really spent signing day with too many programs, but, I'm kind of like anybody else. I mean, I'm watching, with the exception of Will Muschamp, Auburn lose its mind when it gets players. It becomes kind of showy at a certain point, and you wonder how much of it is genuine or how much of it's just kind of this spin machine to try and impress the guys you just got or impress the next year's crop or whatever. Parents, are you trying to appeal to parents in that moment? You're trying to take advantage, obviously, of the fact that there's a camera in the room. But, again, take someone, he didn't even have his guys in one room. They had the recruiting guys were on one side of the offices, and then the offensive staff that I was kind of hanging out with, they were on the other side of the building. So, I guess everybody's going to have a different approach to it, and there's no one way to do it. You got to get the players in. There's no question about that. If you don't do that, you better be really good at developing your resume, because it's just not going to work out. But, I haven't been to one that was just crazy. But, you certainly see the whole spectrum on signing day.
It's very clear that Texas A&M did quite well on signing day. Obviously, everything was headlined by Kyler Murray, the all-everything quarterback coming in. They signed a lot of really good offensive skill talent defensively, highlighted by a couple of big names. But it seems the biggest offseason addition to the Aggies was probably still John Chavis, their new defensive coordinator coming from Baton Rouge. Obviously, you're familiar with him as well from his days in Knoxville.
Right.
How much better do you anticipate he immediately makes Texas A&M? Is the difference, I guess, just in terms of coaching, or was there an actual talent problem last season?
I would lean more toward the talent issue because coaches I know respect Mark Snyder and think he's historically been a pretty good coach. And I don't know that it's indicative of the last couple of years when A&M was in the hundreds in total defense that, it was all a Mark Snyder problem. I know they had – I'll give you an example. There's a coach at another school around here, not in Austin, I'll say that told me last year that A&M played a safety that had no business on the field for a Big 12 school. Or an SEC school. So, I think that gives you an indication that it certainly was a talent issue at one point in time, that you have to gradually fix that in 2 or 3 classes. So I think, while a lot of it, we have to assume at this point that they're going to be better defensively under Chavis. And if they are, he'll get a lot of credit for that. But the fact of the matter is, too, that the talent is better. They didn't have a Myles Garrett until last year, that type player, that edge rusher that they were really missing after DeMontre Moore left. And this year they add Daylon Mack, who's a very highly thought of defensive tackle prospect. So I think getting better up front, the front seven, was really lacking. I think they still have some depth issues there. They're not going to be perfect this year. They're not going to be a top 25 defense probably. But if they can cut into where they were, which again was in the hundreds, and just not be a liability. Just get off the field on third down, just keep the opponent under 30, 35 points and give the offense a chance. I think that's all they're really asking for. The one thing to me, guys, to really watch with that storyline of Chavis coming over is the fact that this guy has been in the SEC for a couple of decades, but he's never worked with this kind of offense before, opposite his defense. So, how does the speed and the tempo of Kevin Sumlin and Jake Spavital's offense, how does that impact a defensive coordinator who's really never worked with that, not just in practice, but in terms of the flow of the game? That's certainly not something that was happening at LSU, definitely not something that was happening at Tennessee. So, I was curious to see what someone said about that. And when I asked him, he said, if he had an issue with it, he wouldn't be here. And so that's pretty much that ended that conversation.
Nice.
And on the LSU side now, they already had some questions at quarterback. You factor in that John Chavis is leaving to go to another SEC school. I think it's natural to ask questions about where that defense goes. As someone who follows this closely, Travis, which of those two questions now concerns you more as we head into 2015 for LSU?
Well, quarterback's never really been a strong point for LSU. They've almost gotten by with average at best quarterback play. So they've always leaned so hard on the defense that I think that would be the bigger question to me. And they still have some really, really good players. Jamal Adams is going to be the next, Patrick Peterson type defender that LSU has, and you can rattle off a lot that they've had in the secondary in the last, 5 or so years. So they're not bereft of talent. They've still got a lot of players roaming around there. But I think you have to ask some questions. And I think Kevin Steele, who they wound up hiring, is a pretty good coach. He got ran off at Clemson for the same reasons that I just mentioned about Chavis. He did not react well to being in a defense that had to play opposite a tempo offense when Chad Morris got to Clemson. So, I think he's in a much more comfortable situation now at LSU where they're going to be pro-style and they're going to be a lot more conventional. So I think he'll be fine. I don't think there's a huge drop-off there. What I do think, and I'm sure you guys have noticed this and probably talked about it a lot, is the defensive line talent has slipped just ever so slightly. And that's really all it takes to kind of come back to earth. And it was still a top 25, top 30 defense last year. they've still been good the last couple of years, but they just haven't been to that top 5 sort of degree. And I think that's the slip that makes that quarterback position, all the more, under a microscope, because suddenly every little flaw that a team has is magnified when your strength isn't as good as it has been. So I think that's what's happening at LSU. But I think there's some real questions there about where they go. The players are still coming in. That's not going to change because of where LSU is located. They're going to be able to pull those kids from in-state and stay competitive because their talent level is that high. The problem, as one SEC West coach told me last summer, is nobody's coming back to the pack.
Yeah.
So when you have Arkansas getting better, we're talking about A&M improving their talent level, especially on defense, Ole Miss and Mississippi State having the seasons they did last year. Who's going to lose these games? I mean, somebody's got to lose to somebody. So are we going to have a bunch of 4-4 teams in the SEC West? I think it's going to be such a yearly cyclical kind of thing.
The answer, by the way, is Wofford. Wofford will lose to the SEC West teams.
Dan, that's the point you brought up a couple weeks ago when we asked our stock up, stock down, our Dunzo, not Dunzo show, LSU as a perennial top 10, top 15 team. It's almost tough to say anyone outside Alabama at this point looking in the SEC West is going to fall into that category just because, as you said, Travis, no one's really fallen back to the pack, and it is Bama's pack because they remain atop that pack. They won, again, their proverbial recruiting national championship. Of course, they went to the college football playoff, didn't quite make it through to the national championship. So what tweaks need to be made if you're Nick Saban? Are there any tweaks that need to be made if you're Nick Saban? Which direction does Bama now go in this offseason to try and win that first ever college football playoff championship?
Well, they've reshuffled the defensive staff. I think that was probably an important piece for them. They didn't feel, and anybody who's watched Alabama could tell you, that they just were not as good on the back end defensively. The secondary just was not what it had been when Jeremy Pruitt was there. So it's been 2 or 3 years. The cornerback play particularly seemed like it had slipped. Guys, when they were left out in one-on-one situations, just couldn't cover. So I think some of the changes that were made there, I think that was a pretty significant shift for Nick Saban, and what he's known as a defensive coach. And, offensively, it's another year that we kind of wonder about them at quarterback. I was one of those guys that was fully all in on the Jake Coker train last summer and rode it right off the cliff. So, that was my bad. Owned up to that one. But, I don't think he's a guy that you can necessarily write off. But we don't know. I mean, we don't know what he's going to do with this chance. And there's some thought that he's going to have to fight again to try and win the job. So I think having Kiffin back and getting a little consistency and continuity there, I think that'll help everybody on that side of the ball. Clearly, they're going to be good up front again. They'll miss Cooper a heck of a lot, but when you have those backs in that offensive line, it can gloss over a lot of issues that you have when you're trying to figure out quarterback or the guys on the outside. But like I said, I think the defensive shifts, the coaching shifts, I think that was a huge piece of the offseason. If you're an Alabama fan, you're paying pretty close attention to that.
Let's take a quick break. This show brought to you by our second sponsor of the evening. You heard them at the top of the show, Squarespace.
Love Squarespace. I'm building my own website right now. I own danrubenstein.com. You better believe I'm using Squarespace.
What are you putting on danrubenstein.com?
Nudes.
Yeah.
Tasteful nudes, excuse me. I'm not sure yet. I was told by people to put stuff on there. Maybe a video reel. Maybe just some hey, everybody, my name is Dan. This is what I do. Hi, have a great day.
Well, one of Squarespace's many mottos is build it beautiful, Dan. You can do so. You can make it simple and powerful and beautiful.
Yeah.
If you use Squarespace, they give you all the tools you need to succeed. They've got 24/7 support via live chat and email. I just used it the other day. Yeah. Only $8 a month, and you can get a free domain if you buy Squarespace for the full year. They have something called responsive design, which in non-tech speak
you
means
have to get in on that.
Yeah, in non-tech world, that means that your website scales and is going to look good on any device, be it a phone, an Android phone, an iPhone, an iPad, a phablet, whatever. It's going to look great.
Literally any Texas Instruments device.
That's right. Responsive design is where it's at. You can even build a commerce site with a free online store, or use something called Cover Pages, which is a new feature that allows you to set up a beautiful one-page online presence in just minutes. P.S. That's the kind of site I built for my wedding, my Cover Page site.
So you are going to be my 24/7 tech support.
That's right.
Nice. Because of all your Squarespace knowledge. No, do the Squarespace thing. They're fantastic.
Start a trial. You don't need a credit card. All you need to do is sign up and start building your website today. If you decide it's for you, make sure you use the promo code VERBAL. Verbal, VERBAL. You'll get 10% off your first purchase. If you want to show your support for the Solid Verbal, Squarespace has been a very loyal sponsor of the Solid Verbal, so we do thank them for all their support. The least you can do if you want to return the favor is head on out to Squarespace and use our promo code VERBAL for 10% off. One more time, it's Squarespace, Daniel, and what's the motto?
Build it beautiful. Let's go to a team that nobody, not even just in the SEC, but nobody in the country wanted to play by the end of the fall. And that's Arkansas, just because of how well they played on really both sides of the ball, but in particular defense, with how able they were to shut everybody down, essentially, concluding, with that ridiculous Ole Miss game. How much of a believer at this point, certainly the Razorbacks had the momentum during the back half of their schedule, that Arkansas has the baseline, they have the pieces in place to build upon, even with what they lost with, I believe it's Marshall Spade is gone, Trey Flowers is gone, really bedrocks that defense. Are you as much of a believer as you were at the end of the season now looking forward?
Was that believer?
Believer.
Believer.
How much are you what is your confidence level that the foundation is there for Arkansas in years to come?
They're better. I mean, there's no doubt that they're better. I saw them play a couple of times early last season, and I could have told you that they were going to break through and win at least a couple of SEC games. I was out in Lubbock when they destroyed Texas Tech on the ground. I was at the A&M game that they should have won. So, they've made huge strides. And I think what happened on defense and getting Rob Smith, they're just that much more aggressive. They're more fundamentally sound. I just think they're sharper in a lot of areas on that side of the ball. And if you go back to, when they were really moving forward and challenging LSU and Alabama when Petrino was there, the defense, and especially the defensive front, that was always the gap. That was the thing that they couldn't close to really compete with those teams. They were just not good enough and sound enough up front on the defensive line. So I think, Flowers is gone, but I just think philosophically and schematically, they're so much better that they're going to be competitive in those games. So how much better are they? It's kind of the same thing that you go back to in the SEC West. Who are they going to beat that they didn't beat last year? Missouri was a game I thought they were going to win that game and finish strong, and they didn't. But I think it's those sorts of games. So really, we're talking about maybe 2 or 3 swing games for Arkansas.
Right.
Where does that put them at the end of the year? Probably in the 8 to 10 win kind of zone. The dog is barking. In case you were.
What is the dog's name?
We have a Pomeranian named Molly.
Oh, okay.
It was a piece of my inheritance upon getting married.
Gotcha. A team that has almost, at least in 2014, that almost secretly became how you described LSU, just led by the defense. The quarterback play was particularly spotty, unexpectedly spotty with Matty Mock last season. Missouri, constantly putting defensive players into the NFL, constantly overwhelming offenses, it seems, each and every week, with perhaps the exception of Georgia. But with a number of big names now moving on, Marcus Golden, Shane Ray sort of highlight that defensive line. Is there any reason not to believe, once again, there's my buzzword, not to trust in Gary Pinkel and his staff, because they've sort of earned the benefit of the doubt these past few seasons that they do not go down easy, and now they just win 10, 11 games a season?
I mean, I don't think anybody is still flying under the radar any more than Missouri is. And they're still one of the last teams that get asked about or talked about in these conversations. And it really is amazing. Having seen them break through in the SEC before A&M did, But, I do have questions about, how much are they going to miss Dave Steckel at D.C., even if you've upgraded potentially in getting Barry Odom from Memphis, who I think is one of the bright up-and-coming defensive coordinators in the country. So, we don't know. I mean, how well will he do? Will things kind of remain the same philosophically? You'd think that they would, but you're not really sure. It's just they wind up being this mystery team that just plays well enough in an average enough division to win. And in a sense, it's an indictment of Georgia. I know that they've had injury issues and last year a suspension issue with Gurley, but you look at the rosters and personnel-wise, you say, why? Of course, Georgia has to be the favorite in the East, but it's kind of the same thing. I mean, Tennessee is going to be better. We talked about that.
Yep.
Big questions for South Carolina. Florida, it's going to take time for McElwain to really get things going, I would imagine. So, again, it winds up being a pretty wide-open division, and you cannot count Missouri out because of the last couple of seasons. The track record is there that demonstrates that they can play in this league. So, regardless of the changes, regardless of who they lose, I think it's still a team you have to watch.
All right, we've now had a signing day. We've now had time to sort of hear a little bit about Jim McElwain's plans for Florida. He comes away with a couple of really big wins on signing day, which is important for a coach who really didn't have all that much time to close out the Gators class. Now that you've had a little time to review who he's brought in for his staff, who he's brought in on signing day, who's gone, who's staying in Gainesville, are you optimistic about Florida in the short term? And if not, how long do you think that might take, given especially how talent-rich the area is around McElwain in Florida?
Well, one, I thought the Jeff Collins hire for defense coordinator was a really solid one. I thought he did a great job of developing talent at Mississippi State. He's going to have a lot better players, raw prospects to bring in at Florida. So, I think they're going to be as solid as they were on that side of the ball. So I think that's good news if you're a Florida fan. As far as the offense goes, I think what has to happen is it winds up being almost an audition this fall that McElwain, or a demonstration of some kind, that McElwain says, okay, Florida recruit, highly thought of receiver types, here is our offense. Here's what you can come be a part of. Because I think everybody was so soured to what it became and just how, ragged and inconsistent, and just, there was no fluidity because of the constant changes of the offensive coordinators, that they ran 3 different offenses while Muschamp was there. Nobody knew really. You had an idea of what it was going to be, but it wasn't exciting, and it wasn't very good, and there was no quarterback to drive it. So I think McElwain can come in and say, this is what we want it to look like. This is the vision. And then, come join it. Come play for Florida. So I think that's what happens this fall. Does it take another season of that to really get that churn going and get the players in? I don't know. But, I think he will be successful at it. I think that's the reason they hired him, is because of his offensive background, what they had done at Colorado State. That's something that really isn't talked about a whole lot, is how productive Grayson was at quarterback, and how they were able to kind of produce and develop receivers. Colorado State widely was not discussed, but if not for one bad loss, it would have been right in the conversation to be the Group of 5 representative in the New Year's Six Bowl. So
very true.
I think that's why he was appealing to Jeremy Foley. We knew that he needed some kind of offensive spark. So now I think it's just going to take, I don't think a lot of time, but I think it will take a little bit of time to show the state of Florida and, kind of what they're dealing with now.
Let's go to Mississippi State, because there is most certainly a time when we'd look at this team, we'd see the turnover and maybe worry about where things were headed. But Dan Mullen clearly had a breakout season, Travis. He had a great recruiting class. Dak Prescott, as quarterback, is coming back for his senior season. How big a step back do you see for Mississippi State, if any?
Probably a little bit of a half step, not a full step, but they had a lot of senior leadership They had a lot of veteran players on that team last year that they're really going to miss. I know they had really built toward last season. I don't think they lose all of that for 15, but I don't think it's the same core nucleus that really put them in position midway through the season to be a playoff team. And it's kind of the same thing. I think this is the cycle that we're talking about, that if Mississippi State isn't the team in 15, who's going to win those one or two more games? Auburn, A&M, LSU. You know, it's going to be kind of a coin flip every year who that team's going to be. And I think Mississippi State, frankly, I think they could finish, I don't know, fifth or lower in the West and not be that much worse, if that makes sense. I think that happens sometimes in college football is the team isn't that much worse than the team before it, but the record doesn't really reflect that. I would almost say Auburn was kind of an example of that last year. I don't think Auburn was a bad team at all. I think it was tired and kind of ran out of gas at the end of the year. But I don't think that team, in terms of talent, was much worse than the one that nearly won a championship the season before. It just wasn't that different of a team. So I think that can be the case potentially for Mississippi State this year, a team that just can't really weather it through the course of the season, and you saw that even to some extent last year.
Auburn made some moves on the coaching front this offseason. They acquired Will Muschamp. He was much sought after. You bring a guy like Muschamp in, he obviously gives your defense a credibility that I think Auburn has had trouble trying to establish. What kind of an immediate impact do you see him making for the Auburn Tigers, and how much better do you think it makes this team in 2015?
I don't know that anybody has more momentum in the country than Auburn right now because of that. And this was a guy who nobody questions his defensive chops. And I still think he could be a successful head coach if things had settled themselves quicker and better on the offensive side of the ball. Just starting off with Charlie Weiss was just a complete disaster and really doomed him from the start. But I think going back to Auburn, it's a comfortable situation for him. They've got really, really good players. The talent pool is very deep and getting deeper by adding the number one recruit according to our services, Byron Cowart, who they kind of survived that signing. They scare and winding up going to Florida, but he didn't, and is going to enroll at Auburn. So I thought that's big to kind of signal to the next generation, the next classes, that Auburn is the place to be if you're an elite defender because of Muschamp, because they're going to have a chance at SEC and potentially national titles as they did in the last couple of years. And really, guys, even if you go back to the 2010 season, the defense has not been particularly strong for Auburn, especially in the secondary. They've just kind of winged it. They've given up big plays, big chunk plays. They did in the title year in 10, and then they did again when they made it to the championship a couple of years ago. So I think Muschamp gives them the opportunity to just be a little tighter, just be a little tidier, and develop that pass rush back to, that was the one thing that they did have in those championship runs, or at least the run to get to the BCS title game, was they did have a strong pass rush. So I think getting Carl Lawson back from injury is huge. I think Adams is going to be a huge factor for them on the inside, and he can play outside as well. So I think just really leveraging scheme, space, the things that Muschamp does really well in terms of coaching energy and passion and that sort of thing, he's going to get the most out of them. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Ellis Johnson, who was fired, is a friend of mine. I think he does a great job. But at the same time, I think if you can get Will, and they did, that's a huge upgrade just in terms of momentum and energy. And you've already seen it.
Whew. All right, Dan.
Yes. Are we done? Are we done with the entire SEC interview?
There are more SEC teams to talk about.
Love it.
But we've talked about so much else that we thought, well, people need something to get them through the early part of the week too.
Something to look forward to.
Let's do this. Let's break the show into two parts. Let's talk more with Travis Haney. Let's release part 2 on Sunday. Talk more SEC then.
I think that's a great idea.
Let's go ahead and do that. Keep it going
with sort of midweek, beginning of the week. Keep that momentum alive.
I don't know how long it's going to last, but I've been reading.
I feel good, Ty. I feel great about it.
I've been reading the message boards. I've been reading some of the emails and the tweets.
Yeah.
We're not so big we don't see these things.
That's true.
People want more verbal.
People miss you.
We're going to do it. So we'll put a show out on Sunday. We'll see how long the momentum lasts. And
we got to nibble on the verballers' ears a little bit.
And see what
you know what I'm saying, Ty?
See what we can do.
Yeah.
Part 2 will be out at some point this weekend. More with Travis Haney then. Big thanks to our sponsors this evening. Our gracious sponsors this evening. Squarespace and Vegas.com. Do check them out. Cash in on all the deals. In the meantime, if you like the show, head on out to iTunes.com/solidverbal. Give us a review. Subscribe to the show. Tell your friends about the show.
Yeah.
We're going to try and keep the train rolling all throughout this off season. You can also follow us on Facebook. Share us with your friends. Also look for us on Twitter and FanCred as well, Mr. Rubenstein.
The mayor of Caracas, Venezuela was arrested.
Oh?
I like reading all about intrigue in South and Central America.
Okay.
I love all that stuff.
Well, for that guy over there, Mr. Dan Rubenstein.
Yes.
I will talk to you in some capacity very soon. We will put out our next show on Sunday. You'll hear more breakdown of the SEC and all things vinyl records.
Absolutely.
With our good friend Travis Haney from ESPN.com when we release our next show. For that guy over there, Mr. Dan Rubenstein. For myself, Ty Hildebrand, thanks again for tuning in. We'll catch you all in a few days. Stay solid.
Peace.